Here's the number that should stop you cold. The average Social Security retired worker benefit in January 2026 is about $2,071 a month after the 2.8% COLA, and millions of Americans get less than that. Meanwhile, a typical modest U.S. retiree monthly budget still runs near $4,800 once you add rent, groceries, utilities, and the dental and vision Medicare never covers. That is a shortfall of roughly $2,700 every single month on the average check alone. A 2025 Harris poll found that 44% of U.S. adults have seriously considered retiring abroad, not for adventure, but because the math at home does not close. Viral lists keep ranking beaches and cheap beer. This video ranks something different. English-speaking countries where that same Social Security check does not just keep you comfortable, it can fund helpers, dining out, and better housing than you can buy in Phoenix or Cleveland. We are measuring stretch into a rich lifestyle, not survival. We verified visa thresholds, tax rules, healthcare paths, and real neighborhood budgets across 7 English-speaking destinations, official English or English so ubiquitous you can live daily life without another language, then ranked them from worst stretch to best stretch of a typical Social Security check into that rich lifestyle, counting down 7 to 1. Stay until number 1. Because the country at the top is not the one influencers push hardest, and the visa deposit is smaller than you think for a life that can include a helper, beachfront rent, and dinners out on roughly $1,200 to $1,800 a month. Everything in this video was cross-referenced against Social Security Administration January 2026 benefit and COLA releases, Harris poll, retirement abroad findings, official visa and residency portals including Malta's MRP, Belize Tourism Board QRP rules, Malaysia's MM2H 2026 tiers, and the Philippine Retirement Authority SRRV classic requirements, plus Expatastan and Numbeo-style cost snapshots, internations and active American expat forums for on-the-ground healthcare and safety nuance. Our ranking criterion is narrow on purpose. English must be official or ubiquitous in daily life, and the score is how far a Social Security-sized income stretches into helpers, dining out, and better housing, not how pretty the drone shot looks. We are not ranking the cheapest hostel month, the prettiest drone shot, or the loudest Facebook group. We are ranking surplus lifestyle on a fixed U.S. benefit in places where you can live in English. Number 7 is still English-speaking and still better than the U.S. gap, it just does not make you rich on the check alone. Number 1 is where that check can feel like a king's budget. Malta surprises Americans because it is a full EU member where English is an official language, you can open a bank account, see a specialist, and argue with a landlord without learning Maltese. That alone puts it on lists most budget retirees never open. The shock is not that Malta works. The shock is how quickly the Mediterranean price tag eats a Social Security check once you want the rich version of the life, not the bare-bones version. Walk the Sliema promenade at dusk and you will see why Americans fall for this island in a weekend. Apartments look onto the water. Cafes run in English. The ferry to Valletta feels like a commute, not a vacation stunt. St. Julian's next door adds denser nightlife and denser rents. Gozo, a short ferry hop, stretches the budget further if you accept quieter nights and a slower medical referral path back to the main island. On the ground in Sliema and St. Julian's, a comfortable solo or couple budget often lands in the $2,500 to $3,500 monthly range once you include a decent furnished flat, utilities, groceries, and eating out a few times a week. That is better than the US $4,800 modest need. You are closing a 4-figure monthly gap just by changing the map. But it is not ultra-rich on Social Security alone. If your check is the national average near $2,070, you are still short of that comfortable Malta band, unless savings, a second pension, or a working spouse fills the hole. That is why Malta opens this countdown at number 7. English and EU standards are real. King lifestyle on the check alone is not. The Malta retirement program is the structured path many Americans eye. A 15% tax on remitted foreign pension income with a €7,500 annual minimum tax, plus property and residency conditions you must meet before treating it as a done deal. Run that minimum against a year of Social Security and you see the design. This program expects remitted pension income at a level that produces real tax for Malta, not a token stay. Healthcare is strong by Mediterranean standards. Private options with English-speaking staff are common in the Sliema St. Julian's corridor, and EU standards matter if you care about regulation. For Americans comparing options, tools like Retire Finder can help you stress test whether Malta's monthly reality and visa math fit your actual benefit, not a blogger's best month. The catch is brutal and simple. Social Security alone rarely funds the rich lifestyle here. You get comfortable, maybe very comfortable if you already have savings or a second pension, but helpers, frequent waterfront dining, and a premium sea view flat push you toward the top of that $2,500, $3,500 band or beyond. Summer tourist density in St. Julian's is real. Property purchase and rental competition from other EU retirees is real. Car traffic on a small island will test anyone who dreamed of empty coastal roads. And if your check sits below the average, which describes a huge share of American retirees, Malta will feel tight before the first Festa season ends. The verdict? Malta is the English-speaking EU option for retirees who want European healthcare standards and zero language friction. Perfect if you have more than Social Security alone. Number 7, if the check is your whole story. But if you want Central America where English is official and foreign income can sit tax-free under a real residency program, we have to look at number 6. Belize is the only English official country in Central America, and that fact alone still shocks Americans who assume every cheap Latin American retirement requires Spanish. You can negotiate rent, see a doctor, and deal with immigration in English. The surprise is how far a Social Security check goes here compared with Malta. Comfortable living often lands around $2,000 to $2,800 a month, depending on whether you choose quieter Corozal, laid-back Placencia, or pricier Ambergris Caye. On an average check near $2,070, you are suddenly inside the comfortable band instead of thousands short of it. The qualified retirement program remains the headline path. Age 40 or older with proof of at least $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year in foreign income, a threshold many Social Security recipients can clear even below the national average benefit. Foreign source income under QRP can sit with meaningful tax exemption under Belize's program rules, which is why Americans treat Belize as a paperwork win, not just a beach win. Compare that to the US for a second. At home, $2,000 a month is poverty-adjacent retirement. Under QRP math, it is the door key. That single reframing, income that fails at home qualifying you abroad, is why Belize keeps showing up in serious retirement planning conversations, even when healthcare caveats are loud. Corozal attracts border hoppers who use Mexico for bigger city services and keep Belize costs lower. Placencia suits people who want village scale, sandy sidewalks, known faces, fewer high-rises. Ambergris Caye is the denser tourist economy. Golf carts, condo towers, restaurant rows, and the denser price tag. If you plant yourself on the most tourist-facing strip of San Pedro and eat like a cruise passenger every night, Social Security stops feeling generous. If you live like a resident a few streets back, the stretch returns. Dining out is affordable relative to the US. A modest helper arrangement is possible in many communities. Housing that would be impossible on $2,070 in Florida can still feel spacious here if you stay off the ultra-tourist strips. That is the stretch story, Social Security, into a life that includes leisure, not just rice and beans. English removes the daily friction tax that eats energy in non-English destinations, which is half the reason Belize outranks prettier Spanish-speaking neighbors on this particular list. The catch is healthcare, and you need to hear it without the brochure softener. Belize's public and private systems are thin for serious care. Expats routinely plan evacuation pathways to Mexico, Guatemala, or Miami for major procedures. That means travel insurance, cash reserves, and a realistic plan, not hope. Hurricane exposure on the Cayes is seasonal and real. Ambergris rents and restaurant prices have climbed with tourism. Internet and power reliability vary by town. And remote living can feel isolating if you expected U.S. grade specialists around the corner. If medical risk keeps you up at night, this is where a soft look at specialized expat health coverage starts to matter. Not as a sales pitch, as survival math. The verdict. Belize is the English official Central American play where QRP paperwork and tax treatment can make Social Security work for a comfortable coastal life. Perfect if you accept thin local healthcare and budget for evacuation. But if you want that check to stretch dramatically further in a country with excellent private hospitals and official English among 11 languages, number 5 is South Africa. South Africa rarely appears on American Social Security stretch lists because crime headlines dominate the algorithm. That is exactly why it surprises people who dig into the currency math. English is one of 11 official languages and functions as the daily language of business, private healthcare, and most expat life. Outside the most expensive Cape Town CBD pockets, the Rand can turn a roughly $2,070 Social Security check into a lifestyle that includes dining out, domestic help, and a gated home that would bankrupt you in California. On the Garden Route, Knysna, Plettenberg Bay, and neighboring towns, American retirees report that groceries, restaurants, and private medical consults feel almost unfair compared with U.S. prices when you convert from dollars. A week of dinners out that would blow a Social Security budget in Orlando can fit inside a normal month here. Domestic help that sounds like a luxury line item in Arizona can sit inside a normal South African expat budget when the Rand cooperates. Cape Town suburbs require careful selection. The wrong block is a quality of life disaster. The right gated community can feel like a resort with a cost of living that still undercuts a modest U.S. city. Fishhoek, Muizenberg Edges, and similar residential corridors get named in expat conversations for a reason. They are lived in, not postcard only. Private healthcare is the other surprise. Excellent specialists and hospitals at prices that look absurd next to U.S. bills, which is why medical travelers have eyed South Africa for years. English at reception is normal. Specialist waits that destroy Medicare Advantage plans in the U.S. often shrink here if you pay privately. That combination, currency stretch plus private hospital quality, is why South Africa outranks Belize on this list, even though Belize wins on visa marketing simplicity. You can hire help. You can eat out without checking the menu twice. You can see a private doctor in English without waiting 6 months. That is the rich lifestyle definition this ranking uses, not yacht ownership, but dignity and surplus on a fixed U.S. benefit. Against the Harris poll backdrop, 44% of U.S. adults already considering a foreign retirement. South Africa is the option people skip because of fear, then rediscover when they run the RAND spreadsheet. The catch is crime, and pretending otherwise is how channels lose trust. Gated living is common for a reason. Car smash and grabs, home invasions in certain corridors, and sharp neighborhood variation mean you do not pick a suburb from a drone video. You talk to residents, you visit at night, you budget for security systems and community rules. Load shedding and infrastructure frustration still surface depending on region and year. Visa and residency paths for retirees are more paperwork-heavy than Belize's QRP brochure simplicity. And social inequality is visible every day. Some Americans cannot emotionally settle with that contrast outside the gate. If constant vigilance would poison your retirement, no amount of surplus dining fixes it. The verdict: South Africa is for retirees who will choose location like a security decision and then enjoy private healthcare and RAND-powered surplus. Perfect if you are disciplined about neighborhoods. A hard no if constant vigilance would ruin retirement. But if you want the Caribbean with official English and Social Security that can fund a helper and regular dining, number 4 is Jamaica. Jamaica is English official, culturally familiar to Americans through decades of tourism, and still widely misunderstood as only all-inclusive resorts. The surprise is inland and edge of tourist living, Montego Bay outskirts, quieter pockets near Ocho Rios, and Highland Mandeville can put low costs in reach of a social security check in a way resort strips never will. When rent, food, and transport stay lean, that roughly $2,070 can fund a helper and regular dining out, the exact rich versus comfortable line this video is measuring. Compare the US math again for a second. At home, the average check leaves you nearly $2,700 short of a modest month. In the right Jamaican community, that same check can clear housing and still leave room for cooked meals you did not prepare yourself and evenings out that do not feel like a budget emergency. That is not a rounding error. That is a different retirement class. English removes the daily friction tax that eats energy in non-English destinations. Pharmacies, banks, and many clinics operate in English as the default. Mandeville sits in the hills, cooler air, residential rhythm, fewer cruise ship pulses. Quieter Ocho Rios side streets keep you near tourism infrastructure without paying hip strip prices for every meal. Montego Bay outskirts let you use the airport and hospital access while sleeping somewhere the nightly rate was not designed for spring break. Tourism infrastructure means you are never far from flights, familiar foods, and other English-speaking retirees. That social ease matters when you are 68 and rebuilding a life. It also means you can test drive the country on a normal tourist visa before you commit, a practical advantage Guyana and parts of South Africa do not market as cleanly. Costs rise fast on the most tourist-facing waterfronts, which is why this entry names outskirts and quieter areas on purpose. An American who retires into a resort economy and shops like a tourist will recreate the U.S. shortfall with better weather. An American who lives like a resident finds the surplus this ranking is hunting. The catch is a twin threat: crime in specific corridors and hurricane season for coastal exposure. You do not wander at night like a cruise passenger. You learn which roads and hours locals treat carefully. Healthcare is mixed. Private care can be decent for routine needs in larger centers, but complex cases may mean travel or tough choices. Bureaucracy and utility reliability can frustrate Americans used to on-demand everything. Import-heavy grocery habits will punish your budget if you insist on eating like you never left Texas. And if you park yourself on the most expensive tourist strip, Social Security stops feeling rich overnight. The verdict? Jamaica rewards retirees who live like residents on the edges of tourist economies. Perfect for English-first Caribbean life with helper and dining stretch. Wrong for anyone who needs U.S. grade trauma care next door. But if you want South America's only English-speaking country and some of the lowest monthly spend numbers on this entire list, number 3 is Guyana. Guyana is South America's only English-speaking country, a fact that still fails to appear in half the retirement roundups Americans watch. That linguistic uniqueness is the first surprise. The second is the cost floor. Expatistan-style single-person spending in the roughly $750 to $1,300 monthly range is still discussed as possible depending on lifestyle and location, which means a Social Security check can look enormous on paper compared with Malta or even Belize. Do the rhetorical math out loud. If a careful single life can run near $1,000 a month, an average Social Security check near $2,070 leaves roughly $1,000 of monthly surplus before you even talk about a second pension. On that kind of burn rate, $2,070 is not survival money. It is surplus money. Dining out becomes normal. Housing that feels spacious becomes normal. A helper becomes a budget line, not a fantasy. That is why Guyana sits above Jamaica on stretch, even though Jamaica wins on tourism polish. For viewers who only ever see South America through Spanish-language visa videos, Guyana is the English-speaking blind spot that can rewrite the spreadsheet overnight. Georgetown requires careful neighborhood choice. Treat it like any capital with sharp variation block to block. Quieter coastal and hinterland towns trade amenities for lower friction and lower costs. English in government, shops, and clinics. Removes the translation tax that drains retirees in neighboring Spanish and Portuguese-speaking countries. For Americans who already feel boxed in by U.S. prices, Guyana is the map square almost nobody in their Facebook group has visited, which is both the opportunity and the risk. Here is the plot twist you must bake into any 2026 plan. The oil boom is changing prices. What looked impossibly cheap in older forum posts is repricing in boom-adjacent areas, housing demand from energy workers, rising restaurant tabs in certain corridors, and infrastructure that was already uneven under new pressure. None of that erases the stretch advantage yet, but it means your research must be current, not a 2019 blog. A number that made Guyana feel like number 1 3 years ago can drift toward number 3 reality fast. The catch stack is honest. Healthcare and infrastructure lag what you get in Malaysia or Malta. Power, roads, and specialist access can frustrate. Georgetown has zones you treat with street smarts, not Instagram optimism. Flooding and drainage issues hit low-lying areas in rainy stretches. And the visa path is less polished than Belize's QRP marketing machine. More improvisation, more local process knowledge, less glossy PDF. Americans who need turnkey retirement products bounce hard. Americans who can live with developing country friction and watch the oil boom's price effects can still turn Social Security into a high surplus life. The verdict. Guyana is the deep value English-speaking outlier for retirees who want maximum stretch and will accept unfinished infrastructure. Perfect if you are adaptable, a mismatch if you need polished private hospitals and a brochure visa. But if you want that rich monthly lifestyle with world-class private hospitals and English everywhere, and you can clear a serious visa capital barrier, number 2 is Malaysia. Malaysia is not English official in the same constitutional sense as Jamaica or Belize, but English is ubiquitous in daily expat life, a British colonial legacy that still lets you navigate hospitals, condos, menus, and many government counters without Malay fluency. That is why it belongs on an English-speaking stretch list. The surprise for Social Security retirees is how rich the monthly lifestyle can feel once you are in. A couple living comfortably in Penang often lands around $1,350 to $2,000 a month, depending on condo standard and dining habits, which means an average-sized U.S. benefit can fund a life with surplus, not scarcity. Walk Georgetown beyond the street art alleys and you find the real retirement texture: kopitiams, condo corridors, wet markets, and specialists who take appointments in English. A couple at the low end of that $1,350 to $2,000 band is not eating instant noodles. They are living. At the high end, they are dining out often, keeping a comfortable condo, and still comparing favorably to a single modest U.S. month at $4,800. That is the core contrast this series exists to make. The same dollars that feel like scarcity in a U.S. suburb can feel like abundance in Penang if the visa door opens. Caye suburbs trade island pace for mall density and flight connectivity. Langkawi adds quieter coastal living with duty-free quirks that change how you budget alcohol and certain imports. Private healthcare is the second shock. Penang hospitals draw medical travelers from across Asia. English-speaking specialists, modern equipment, and bills that look like a rounding error next to U.S. invoices are why so many Americans who try Penang never want to leave. A procedure that would wipe a year of Social Security at home can land as a planned expense here. Food culture alone, hawker centers to air-conditioned malls, makes dining out a default habit rather than a splurge. That is rich lifestyle by this video's definition: surplus, service, and health access on a fixed U.S. check. So why is Malaysia number 2 instead of number 1? The visa capital barrier. MM2H in its 2026 form is not a show-up-with-your-Social Security statement program. Silver tier fixed deposit around USD 150,000 plus property purchase tiers and other conditions mean the monthly lifestyle can be rich while the entry ticket stays steep. Put that in U.S. terms. Many retirees who could thrive on $1,800 a month in Penang cannot park $150,000 in a fixed deposit and still feel safe. If you cannot clear that capital, the rich on $2,070 story stalls at immigration even when the kopi and condo math works. That distinction, lifestyle math versus visa math, is the entire reason this ranking exists. The catch beyond MM2H capital: heat and humidity year-round, occasional haze from regional burning seasons, and the need to pick housing with real air conditioning budgets. Cultural adjustment is milder than many Asian destinations but still real. You are a guest in a Muslim-majority country with its own norms and political debates. MM2H details have shifted across recent years. You verify the current tier before you sell a house in Ohio. Long-stay alternatives exist for some profiles, but the polished long-term retiree product Americans want still orbits MM2H-style capital. And if your only income is Social Security with minimal savings, Malaysia may offer the dream monthly burn rate while locking the door on residency. The verdict? Malaysia is where Social Security can fund a genuinely rich couple lifestyle with excellent private hospitals. Perfect if you can clear MM2H capital requirements. The wrong number 1 fantasy if you only have the monthly check. But if you want the strongest stretch of that check into helpers, beachfront living, and dining out with a retirement visa built around pension proof, stay for number 1, the Philippines. The Philippines is English official, culturally oriented toward American visitors after a long shared history, and still underestimated by retirees who think only of Thailand or Portugal. The surprise is not that it is cheap. The surprise is how specifically a Social Security check maps onto a king lifestyle in cities like Dumaguete, parts of Cebu, and cooler highland Tagaytay beachfront or view condos often discussed in the $400 to $700 monthly range, A live-in or daily helper commonly around $150 to $200 a month, and a total burn of roughly $1,200 to $1,800 that can include dining out as a habit. On roughly $2,070, you are not scraping by, you are ahead. Stack those lines against the US shortfall one more time. At home, $2,070 versus $4,800 leaves you nearly $2,700 underwater every month. In the right Philippine setup, $1,500 all in can mean a water view condo, someone helping with cooking and cleaning, and dinners out that would be a rare splurge in Phoenix. Add a helper at $150 to $200, and you are still often inside a total that leaves room under an average benefit. The leftover from that Social Security check becomes buffer, travel, or dental work Medicare never covered. That is not comfortable. That is rich by the standard this countdown set at the open. And unlike Malta, you are not starting every month already behind the comfortable local band on the check alone. The visa path is why this sits at number 1 for Social Security stretchers rather than Malaysia. SRRV Classic through the Philippine Retirement Authority is built for people 50 and older. Pensioners deposit USD $15,000 with proof of a lifetime pension of at least $800 a month single or $1,000 with dependents. Thresholds many Social Security recipients already clear. Non-pensioner deposits run higher. For SRRV holders, Philippine rules have included meaningful tax exemption treatment on pensions and annuities under the program framework. Another reason Americans run the numbers twice and then book a discovery trip. Compare that $15,000 pensioner deposit with Malaysia's roughly $150,000 silver fixed deposit, and the ranking logic writes itself. Both can deliver rich monthly living, but only one is shaped around the check you already earn. Healthcare has a dual story. PhilHealth offers special rate pathways that retirees plug into as part of a layered plan, while private hospitals in Cebu and major centers provide English-speaking care that feels familiar to Americans. Quality variance is real, which is why this entry names specific lifestyle hubs rather than pretending every provincial clinic matches Makati. Dumaguete attracts a thick expat retiree network and a walkable waterfront rhythm. Cebu offers scale, flights, and more hospital choice. Tagaytay offers cooler air and weekend energy from Manila without Manila prices if you choose carefully. Americans who spend 30 days splitting time across those three usually stop arguing about whether the stretch is real. They start arguing about which climate they want. Compare the whole countdown for a second. Malta makes you comfortable in the EU, but rarely rich on the check alone. Belize clears paperwork and English, but fails you on heavy healthcare. South Africa stretches the rand hard if you accept gates. Jamaica and Guyana push costs down with sharper catches. Malaysia matches the monthly rich life but can block you with MM2H capital. The Philippines is where the monthly rich life and a pension-shaped visa finally line up for the typical Social Security retiree. The catch list is mandatory. Typhoons are seasonal reality. You plan housing and insurance accordingly. Public care quality varies widely. Serious cases need private hospitals and sometimes Manila or abroad. Bureaucracy can be slow and personal. Scams targeting newcomers exist. Use PRA channels and verified agents. Traffic in Cebu and humidity in lowland cities will test anyone who romanticized island time from a resort week. And island time itself will either heal you or drive you mad. None of that erases the arithmetic. Helper, condo, dining, English, and an SRRV path aimed at pensioners is the strongest Social Security to rich lifestyle stack on this list. The verdict: The Philippines is the #1 English-speaking stretch destination for Social Security retirees who want surplus living, helpers, better housing, dinners out, with a visa designed around pension proof rather than a six-figure fixed deposit. If you have been matching these 7 against your actual benefit amount and healthcare must-haves, Retire Finder is built for that kind of side-by-side reality check before you fall in love with a skyline video. 7 English-speaking destinations. 1 ranking rule. How far does a Social Security check stretch into a rich lifestyle? Helpers, dining out, better housing, not just bare comfort. Malta. EU, English, and strong healthcare. Comfortable more than ultra-rich on the check alone. Belize. Only English official, Central America, QRP friendly, evacuate for serious care. South Africa. RAN-powered surplus on the garden route if you live gated and careful. Jamaica. Caribbean English with helper and dining stretch off the tourist strip. Guyana. South America's English outlier where $750 to $1,300 months still get discussed. Oil boom pending. Malaysia. Penang-level rich monthly living and excellent private hospitals, blocked for many by MM2H capital. Philippines. Dumaguete, Cebu, Tagaytay, where $1,200 to $1,800 can feel like a king's budget, and SRRV Classic is built around pension proof. The US math is still the same. About $2,070 average on one side, about $4,800 modest need on the other, and 44% of adults already thinking about leaving. The question was never whether beaches exist. The question was which English-speaking doors turn that fixed check into surplus life without pretending the catches are imaginary. If you only remember one frame from this video, remember this. Comfortable and rich are not the same outcome on Social Security, and the ranking above is the difference between those two words. Knowing the stretch ranking is only half the decision. Matching visa thresholds, healthcare evacuation plans, and your exact benefit to a shortlist is the other half. And that is the work Retire Finder exists to speed up. The door being open on paper means nothing if the monthly burn or the hospital plan fails in year 2. Pick the country where the check feels rich and the catches are ones you can actually live with, then verify every number again before you buy the one-way ticket.